This conference will now be recorded.
Thursday, we're going to be starting our classes in the pre-market basically as soon as we're finished with our meetings right about 9:15. So make sure you have that marked down. All right, so a few things going on this morning. Usually, Monday we see pre-market a little bit slow until we get into the open when we really start to see things move. But the first thing is going to be AMD. I mean, this is just another continuation. It's just day after day we're finding great trades coming into this. And this morning is absolutely no different. It's one of the best trades that we've seen come into the pre-market. All right, so let's talk about the story from Friday. Remember, we had a ton of buying that came in at this 33 level, which is telling us that we needed a big pullback. Now, we just got a really nice burst of buying that came in at 31.60, but coming all the way back, if we look at this 32 level, we got a bunch of selling that came in, which is telling us that we're going to have an extended pullback before we end up going back towards that buying that we had on Friday. The one thing to think about, though, is that at that 32, it did not pull back whatsoever. So I would not be shocked to see, and for some reason, there we go. I would not be shocked to see this thing kind of pull back up above that 32 first, and get a decent move to that upside before we end up seeing it really come to that pullback. Now, AMD is a hot stock right now, so we have been seeing a lot of movement come into it that hasn't really fulfill the prints immediately. It's taken a little bit longer because of the fact it's getting bully, but as of right this second, you can see with this, we have a print line at 31.50, so that would be really a spot to look for this thing to stop, to come back up towards those 32 prints before we end up coming back down. Overall, the move is up without a shadow of a doubt. We have so much buying above the 30 level in AMD, but the one thing we have to realize is that stocks don't just go straight up and go straight down. So based off the amount of selling that we saw at that 32, I am expecting this thing to pull back up after this, basically this pre-market bullying ends, and still continue down a little bit before we get that move back up above 33. And then obviously price target, we still are sitting at 35. Now 35, in my opinion, is a pretty conservative price target. But at the end of the day, depending on the amount of the pullback, back up towards that 35 is going to be a whole bunch of dollars. So we have some really good opportunities that are sitting there in AMD. Next one is TEVA, T-E-V-A. So we have a huge amount of volume coming into this morning. We have 1.4 million shares already being traded. The only thing with it, though, is that I'm not ecstatic about any real show of hand coming in besides this 24.50. Now 24.50, we had some really good prints that came in about 8 o'clock in that area, and we had a whole bunch of selling coming down, down towards there. It closed at 22.85, and then we went all the way up to, to almost that 25 point, but we didn't quite get there. A little bit of a trigger down, not really too much. So we do definitely have some selling sitting at that 24.50, where I'm going to be expecting it to pull back up from. But overall, we definitely have had some big profit taking. Remember, I'm not really that concerned about the selling that's going to be coming in, because we know we're going to get selling. It's that new buying, and I just have not seen enough of it to really tell us that they're looking for this stock to end up coming back up. You can see no real controlling prints on the ask side. One thing to look at, though, is we look over here when it was trading about 24.70, right in that area. We did have a whole bunch of below the bid prints that were out of sequence that came back in. So this 24.50 area is really going to be a huge spot for us to pay attention. We could see 50,000 shares, 816 this morning at 24.47. So as of this moment, I just have not seen enough new buying to tell us that this stock wants to continue back up. The only thing that it looks like it wants to continue back up from is going to be the a pull up from the amount of selling we've seen. But when we pull up to that 24.50, it's going to give us a way better idea of where we're going to be expecting it to go. Next one is NIO. So NIO taking a hit this morning so far. It's starting to actually get some volume towards that downside. But one thing that we do want to remember is that we do have a lot of buying that's still sitting up around 12.50, 13, and 13.50. So even though it's pulling back, it's got a huge range. Its stock moves a whole lot. Excuse me. Moves a whole lot during the day. So, even though we're coming down in the pre-market, the volume that it's coming down on isn't really crazy compared to the actual, the actual volume that we end up seeing coming into this. Because it's an IPO, we don't have any averages yet coming into there, but let's make sure we watch on that 9 level. And then once the market opens, really going to be looking for a show of hand to tell, are we going to continue to pull back, or if we're going to get that buying to end up putting it back towards that upside. Next, looking at is a sideless stock, is NEPT. Now, it's not showing anything great yet, and the volume isn't anything spectacular. But looking at it right now, okay, coming into the 450, hasn't really shown much, but we're holding on some pretty low volume so far in this somewhat bullish consolidation. we haven't got a show of hand. We haven't really seen too much there, but it does have some variables in it that show us an opportunity of it being able to push back up towards that 5 level. So, 50 cents on a $4.50 stock is a lot of money, percentage wise. So as long as we can get some type of show of hand to come back into this thing, there's no reason we can't see it come back up to 5. It just has to give us the prints. The prints aren't there yet. The variables are. But at the end of the day, it could have as many variables as it wants. If it doesn't have the prints, then it's not going to end up happening. All right, so let's take a look at a few other things that we could talk about first, though. All right, we know Twitter's taking a hit this morning. We saw a ton of selling that's been coming into that 30 level. I'm really waiting for a breakdown in this thing. If you look over here, this is an extremely bearish consolidation and pattern sitting on the daily chart. So I am looking for this to come, to definitely break down a lot more than it has. Now this morning, even though it's moving down on absolutely no volume. So that's not a breakdown that, that I really care too much about. There's no real substance behind it, but something I am paying close attention to. And remember, Facebook is the same type of deal. Almost the same exact pattern, extremely, extremely bearish. And we know overall from the prints that we had last week that we are going to be expecting to see this thing at a price target of 160. Even though they're not doing anything yet in the pre-market, I'm going to be watching these very closely because we do already know the stories in them. Let's talk about the pot stocks for a minute. CRON. So we had some, again, last week, we had some really good buying that came in at that 10 level. We ended up pulling back and, we made it back up towards 11. But remember, there's a ton of buying that's still sitting at that 12. We're just in a really ugly consolidation. Nothing really, too interesting coming into this morning yet. Just something, obviously, we're going to continue to keep an eye on. And then TLRY is just unbelievable, the amount that this stock moves. Essentially, though, it just really hasn't shown us much. I mean, this morning we had a few prints at 117, which it technically is satisfied by going up to that 118. There's just not much there yet, but it's a big range stock. It's, certainly out of, 1 through 10, it's definitely a 9, a 9 on the difficulty level of trading because of the orders just not really being there and how much it moves, how drastically it moves. But at the moment, it's one that, it's almost going to be a stock that we're going to be looking at every day. Hasn't shown us anything too great, but certainly something to keep an eye on. And then let's move over to our scanners. Let's see what else we got going on over here. There hasn't really been too much that I care much about. We have MYND, which jumped up on absolutely no volume. We all know when a stock jumps up like this on no volume, we end up seeing it come right back down. SNMX, 556,000 shares. Looks like some type of buyout or some deal, but there's just nothing there for us to even pay attention to. NBEV. Now, NBEV, nice move as I basically started our meeting. We had some really nice volume pushing this thing up to 2. Unfortunately, it's just not a big moving stock. Even on its highs, you could see 90 cents on its high. It just doesn't really run. So this isn't something that I'm really going to be paying too close attention to. But I am going to put it on our side list. I love cheap stocks. I love the cheap stocks that make big moves. Unfortunately, it's getting really quantity already with the amount of volume that we're seeing coming into it. And the orders aren't that big where it couldn't have given us a little bit better of a move. So I am going to put it on the side list stock. There's no reason it can't run. I just don't see the variables there that's telling us that it can. The reason it's going on the side list is because we have better things for us to be paying attention to this morning. CLRB, 116,000, absolutely nothing. And NEPT, just we've already spoken about. Tiva, we've already spoken about. And then we have QTT, 296,000, but another one where it's just not really anything going on this morning. I mean, it's made a big move, but within that move, there's just no substance whatsoever. The volume per minute is just way too low for me. If we got some type of show of hand that came in this, I'd be a lot happier about it, but just based off the prints, I have not seen one whatsoever. CGC, this is one that we certainly are going to continue to pay attention to. I don't know why that wasn't on my list. I was watching this morning. But last week, we saw a whole bunch of buying coming in on Friday over and over again. This was one of the better trades that we had because almost every single level, we had 44, we had 45, we had 46. As this thing was pulling, just continuing to move up, we kept on buying and buying and buying. So now, excuse me. Now sitting at that 49 level, we want to get some type of show of hand, which unfortunately we did not. You could see the prints there hasn't really given any type of show of hand. And, that's typical for a Monday morning. We get that a lot where, we get this movement, but we don't really get that, that red dress that comes back out. So really in CGC, all we're looking for is a red dress, but certainly want to, watch this one. It has a really big, great range. And even with its big range, it's not really that hard of a stock to read and to trade. So certainly one that you want to have towards the top of your list. And then TEUM 122, but there's just Absolutely nothing there. Moving over to the loser side, we have a lot smaller of a list. SWZ, nothing. GOV, just, you can't trade it. There's just nothing there. MYSZ, just nothing coming down. Twitter, we've already spoken about, which, certainly something that we want to watch very closely, especially coming to this 29 level with prints come out. JD 330,000, which it took a hit, but just not enough trading going on. It'll trade, but just nothing really there for us to pay attention to. We have better prints out there and better things to pay attention. So it's one thing. Let's make sure that we do watch Twitter at 29. As soon as I see what happens there, I will post it back in the chat. And that seems to be it. Now, anything else out there that I missed? All right, Twitter selling at 29. Nice show of hand. Wait for pull up before ends up coming back down. All right, so oops, I had my chat up, so it looks like I missed a whole bunch of stuff. Okay, Facebook, we've already talked about. I was in and out for the beginning of AMD. What's up with audio? Anyone have an audio problem? See, I was looking at ECBFF. You know what? There's just nothing there for me. It's a penny stock. I mean, I don't pay attention to them. If I can't look at the orders that are going on out there and I can't see anything, I won't trade it. So I have no interest whatsoever in ACBFF. I don't trade those type of stocks. What was the other one? Let's see. Facebook, we've talked about ECBFF. Okay. All right, Hunter, beautiful. All right, guys, so let's get ready for the morning. We have a whole bunch of things to pay attention to. Twitter just gave us a beautiful show of hand, and we already had the story that it needed to fall anyway. So those prints at 29 are just pretty much icing on the cake. So one of my favorites for the morning. All right, so I will talk to everyone in the chat room, and happy trading.